want to get his.
What's up, you guys? UFO Proof here, along with Jeremy, AlienScientist. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, man. What's up?
Well, we know we were. I was doing a show the other day, and we were discussing Bob Lazar, and then I know how much you despise Bob Lazar, and I thought, you know, and I like the guy, and I thought it would be good if we had a debate, UFO Proof versus AlienScientist, about Bob Lazar, and so. I'll let you start it off. All right, go ahead.
Oh, all right. So a debate on Bob Lazar. Well, I mean, I don't really hate the guy. I don't think that he's telling the truth. I just don't think that he's who he says he is. I think that he's a fraudster and a hoaxer. And I think that mainly because 30 years ago his story came out, and in the 30 years since, we've since discovered the element 115 in a laboratory that he said was would be discovered. Of course, every chemistry book dating back to the 1960s predicted these higher elements. You can go into the to a lot of the old chemistry books, and you'll go to the back page or the opening page, usually in the chemistry book, and there was a periodic table, and it would have these higher elements in parentheses, and it would have a star, asterisk down the bottom, and it said predicted, though not yet discovered. And that was the case for a lot of these until bigger and bigger particle accelerators were able to create these things in the years since. But there seems to be a lot of confusion about that, and I've gotten into a lot of debates on this with people. So I'm going to try to cover these bases before they can, you know, for people cover these questions before they can get asked, sort of.
Okay, so let's see here.
Element 115. That's the. I'm a guy.
Hang on. With what element 115? Okay.
Yeah.
So now that they have synthesized it, which is atoms of it.
It immediately decays. It's super highly radioactive. It's a super heavy element, and it's so unstable because it's just they basically clump a bunch of like smaller atoms together. Like they take cesium atoms and they slam them together until they get them to stick in weird ways. And that's pretty much the experimental process for how they've created these things. And then what they do is they actually they create it inside this particle accelerator, and then when it decays, it gives off spectrum. It gives off radiation, and they take a spectrometer and they read that radiation signature, and they use that radiation signature to determine that it was element 115. That's basically the data set and the paper on it in a summary. If I were to summarize what's in that paper, but thing is, Bob is like I come from a physics background too. I have a bachelor's degree in physics, and I kind of got into physics for the sake of, you know, researching advanced technologies. I want to know anti-gravity, free energy. I want to know all about this stuff, whether it exists, if it does exist, how to build it, and what the technology is behind it. And that's sort of been my mission in all this. And as far as I'm concerned, element 115 is not the secret to anti-gravity. It's not the key. And there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about with regards to that. Element 115, first off, Lazar claimed that there was a stable isotope, and that this stable isotope, for whatever reason, is not in Earth's geological history. It's not discovered naturally on Earth in geology. When we go and dig up rocks, you know, like a lot of the elements have been discovered from geologists digging up rocks and being like, oh, we found this ore of this you know, uranium ores. That's basically how Marie Curie and the first researchers on radiation came about the subject. Was doing experimentation with uranium ores. Sorry, my son's home now. I wanted to do this earlier, but he just got home, and now he's outside the door. He wants to see me, but I told my wife to give me 20 minutes so I could go over and break this stuff down real quick. But apparently she didn't get the message. Give me a second. Let me just text her.
Go ahead. But what I would say is with on, you know, believing Bob Lazar, whether or not, basically, we know the element already, that it could exist. The scientists already predicted this, and he was just kind of going along with it, or, you know, what he says or whatever. Though, but the point of it is that the
well, I get supporters of Bob Lazar who
could be able to amplify the gravitational field outside of the element by, you know, bombarding it, and making a gravitational field for the craft, which in theory, it seems like a plausible way for me to understand how someone might get from someplace else to here. But when it comes to like his whole job and everything, just knowing about Area 51 was incredible. No one even knew about this place, and he knew intimate details of where you actually go to get the job. Like, you know, and obviously people investigated that. George Knapp investigated it and found that there were people who were like, yeah, he did come through here. And so it seems like, you know, he knew that you took Janet Airlines to Area 51. I mean, how would he know this stuff without having some kind of, you know, you would think that he'd have to be working there to at least know something like that.
Well, I came to the conclusion that some of his friends may have supplied him with a lot of this information and the story about Area 51, because what you have in Las Vegas is that there was during that time was a small group of people who were
don't worry, Jeremy, it happens all the time, buddy.
Dude, hey, well, say hello. Hey, it's all right. It's okay. Hey, so he was hanging out with two guys in particular named John Lear and Gene Huff at the time, correct. And I'm kind of under the opinion that they had in John Lear was big on. He was big on all this stuff back then. I mean, he used to be more credible back then. He's gone off the deep end in years since. And then even admitted in that last Kerry Cassidy interview that he's been on like Oxycontin for like the past 10 years, and he's kind of like zonked out. They've had him on like high doses of drugs and stuff, and he's kind of fallen off the deep end. I have emails back and forth with him where he tells me that there's people living on the surface of the sun, that there's civilizations on Venus, Mars, the moon, you know, secret space program kind of stuff everywhere. It just takes it to like this whole extreme limit, and no proof is provided, no evidence is ever like provided to support it, which is really, you know, like what I'm about is finding supporting evidence and trying to figure out, you know, who's legit and who's not.
So an actor the whole time, he's totally acting, and he's just, they're just like, hey, study this part and like try to pretend to be a physicist and come up with crazy ideas to actually.
Well, he already had the, you know, he already had like some of that to begin with, you know, because he was a kind of a nerdy guy. He was into building, you know, rocket bikes and he built a rocket powered bicycle, and he built his own hydrogen powered car. He was building all these like crazy new idea things back in the day, and it was because he used to go down the salt flats a lot and do racing there and other things, and he met a lot of people through that and through his associations there. But he's basically one of these guys from Las Vegas, in this sort of underground sort of group of people that were super interested in Area 51, doing research on it at the time. And I think that what they were trying to do is break the story. They had a bunch of information about this Janet flights, about the, you know, about all this stuff about Area 51, some of this operating stuff that they got just from, you know, living in the area of Las Vegas, talking to people, and just the rumors and everything else that goes around. I'm pretty sure that they had some information, and they wanted a way to get it out there.
I'm from Las Vegas, all right, and I remember when the story broke. And it was
really
fucking everybody. Yeah, I'm from Las Vegas, and I was there when the story broke. That's where I lived, and it was a shock to everybody. I'm like, no one knew about that place. It was that's, you know, and I lived in Las Vegas, and no one fucking knew about that place, man. I mean, everyone knows about the test range and you know, where they blew up bombs. Everyone knows about that. But as for an Air Force base out there, everyone's used to Nellis Air Force Base out in Vegas, right? Not some other Air Force base where everyone knows Nellis. You didn't even know about another one out there, but it fucking existed. They definitely knew about it, but at the same time, I will say this: like it is hard for me to believe that they got a spacecraft from an alien. That is hard for me to believe.
A couple of them, quite a few of them. And then the sport model, and there's other models. And then his sport model, the drawing that he made of it, looked exactly like Billy Meyer's UFO, the Billy Meyer UFO from all the photographs that Billy Meyer. So it's like, it seems like he borrowed a lot of themes from existing themes in ufology and kind of melded into a story. It's more what it seems like to me. S4 would not be an ideal place for a super secret base. There's already like underground hangars and compartmentalized sections at Area 51, which would be quite secure enough to handle you know, alien stuff. They wouldn't need to build another base that far off. There's no historical record of any construction or any contracting employment programs. In fact, like when that story broke, one of the I think it was a senator from Las Vegas, from Nevada, who was in charge of sort of these super secret programs, like, you know, demanded to go down there and be shown that area and be seen, because he didn't approve any programs or any funding for a base out on there in that location, and he wanted to know about this for whatever reasons. And I forget the story on that, but I'll find you some links or something on that information.
Yeah, but from like a politician, they don't have any security clearance, you know.
But
Even
the security clearance. Let's talk about the security. You know? So the security at Area 51 during that time was run by a company called Wackenhut.
Yeah.
And Wackenhut was the main security contractor at the site, and the main contractor, one of the main contractors, I'm not sure if there's any other ones, but EG&G was one of the other big contractors. That's who if Bob Lazar's paperwork and stuff that he had, I would assume that if you know, his ID badge says MJ12, which is like directly borrowed from the MJ12 documents.
That blows my mind. But the thing is, also at the same time, I have a hard time believing a lot of stuff that Stanton Friedman even says because of MJ12. Those documents are obviously fake, you know, but you know, so it's like that kind of weirds it out too. So, but I don't like the MJ12 thing either. I think that's kind of weird, but maybe he's telling the truth for that. I don't know.
Well, it would have made much more sense if he had an ID badge issued by Wackenhut. Then it would be like, oh, okay, this guy is a lot more legit. You know, he's got the right credentials. Like, or if he had
that he talked to Wackenheim, and they said that Bob Lazar got a job through them.
They did.
Yeah, and there's a video. I just watched a video.
I've never heard that before. I know that he talked to Los Alamos, and he was able to confirm that, you know, Bob worked at Los Alamos, so that they're using this. And then this guy Jeremy Corbell Lockyer, he's coming out with this new documentary on Bob Lazar, and he's got this interview with this guy Dr. Krangle, who's saying that because Bob Lazar wore a pocket protector and talked nerdy, he thought he just assumed he was a physicist, and just he acted like a physicist, and he thought he was a physicist. But according to, like, I think they had the phone book from Los Alamos during the time, and someone found Bob Lazar's name in it. And next to Bob Lazar's name in that phone book, it says Kirk Meyer Corporation. And I'm pretty sure Kirk Meyer Corporation wasn't involved in any sort of physics research.
Don't they? Aren't they a security company?
So Kirk Meyer.
Aren't they a security company? I forget. But
I thought that they did like electronics and stuff, and electrochemical stuff. I didn't think that they were involved in anything with like physics, as far as when I researched it. This has been a while since I've looked up this stuff, but Kirk Meyer, North America, I think this is it. And they are electrolyzed water.
What is it?
I don't know if this is the same company that existed back then when he worked out there at Los Alamos. This looks like a different company and stuff. But it was he definitely it definitely doesn't seem to me like
he seems like when he's listening to him talk, he seems like he's acting to you, like he seems like a liar.
Well, they ask him any kind of questions about physics and stuff, and his responses just seem like he's trying to baffle people with bullshit rather than, you know, speak from just general knowledge or experience. And like, or he doesn't sound like someone. I mean, the thing is, no one who with a technical education or a background has ever done an interview with him, like a thorough interview with him. He's not open to interviews. He doesn't want to do interviews, I think, for that reason. He kind of went into the shadows 30 years ago and has kind of been hiding out in the shadows 30 years ago. And the last
someone who wanted to fucking do a big hoax, why hide? Why would
Well,
they come out and say, you know what? And then
the last he hid after the
so
last
much money this whole time, dude. He could have had movies. He could have had everything, and he's like, no, he didn't want any of that. What's up with that for a hoaxer? That doesn't seem right. He should have wanted the money.
his last kind of public appearance, he gave this Q&A session, and he was asked a lot of questions about his educational background, and he asked to like give some names of his professors at MIT, and I have that video posted on my channel. It's called like how Bob Lazar debunked himself 30 years ago and no one noticed.
Of course, that's what you called it.
But it's basically they ask him about it. Name some of your professors if you went to MIT and then the government deleted your records. If you really went there, you should be able to tell us something, about MIT, like what. So he names two professors. One of them, they couldn't find anyone at MIT with that name, and the other one was a professor who actually Stanton Friedman. Not Stanton Friedman, but someone said it was George Knapp, and that information was was released by George Knapp. But someone, I don't, regardless of who discovered it, the fact is that Bob's only educational background and records that we can find is that he took some electronics courses at Pierce Junior College in California. So why you would go to MIT and Caltech, it just seems like you're generating credentials for yourself, because once you're MIT, it's like you're East Coast, and once you're Caltech, you're West Coast. It's not like you would go to both. You would probably, most people who go to MIT for undergrad also go to MIT for their graduate school because they find out what they wanted to do and go there for grad school. You wouldn't go to MIT and then go to grad school at Caltech. It just seems like he's manufacturing credentials to make himself sound more credentialed and more educated.
There are a lot of people who who can do the jobs of a physicist or a scientist or an engineer and wouldn't need to actually go to school. They could actually do it themselves. And I think that and they're just like, oh, like the government will still hire people like that. They'll hire Edward Snowden, and they'll hire people who have no fucking.
Tell them to put it down on your resume that you worked here, and so a lot of people pad their resume, and that was George Knapp's sort of excuse for it too. Yeah. Is that a lot of people pad their resume, and back then it was more common, and and that might have been the result of what happened there, but.
Let me ask you this. There's a part in his thing where he's talking about when he first sees the craft, and it's just a little part, but I always notice it. He said as he's walking by the craft, he noticed a backwards American flag on the side of it.
Yeah.
So is it a possibility that they weren't actually alien craft that he was working on, but that's what they were trying to revert? Like what he actually worked on was something that was reproduced from it, that they were trying to reproduce. Like he was actually starting to work with the actual reverse engineering. He didn't actually do the reverse engineering, but what came after it. Why would a UFO have an American flag on it? If it came from another planet.
That's but then why have him involved anyway? It's almost like if he really did see these things and was brought down there, it's almost like they set this whole thing up just to get him to talk, like it was almost like set up as disinformation intentionally, and that could have been a possibility too. Like maybe they set up this whole place at Area 51, brought him out there, made him think he was a real employee, and then showed him a bunch of this stuff in the desert, and then and then just for the whole purpose of him to come out with this story and
disinformation,
and then because the Russians chased this element 115 stuff for like 25 years. They were going after this like really hard, and their particle accelerators and their research, covertly. It's not like they were publicly going after it, but they were doing a lot of research and building they built a big particle accelerator shortly after that, and it's arguable that they were doing it to test for this and to try and confirm or see that, and it's not clear that they ever got anywhere with that, because there's no papers anywhere that ever shows anything and that could be like, oh, that's a whole nother conspiracy, right? that like, oh yeah, they're covering it up with the the scientific community's helping to cover this up too, because they don't want the truth to be known. But man, I research this stuff, and I tell people, like, go research metamaterials.
Mhm.
Metamaterials are used for invisibility cloaking, invisibility cloaks. They're used for warp drives. MIT's technology review just posted like a paper. A bunch of these physicists authored it, and they basically wrote a whole paper on how to build a warp drive using metamaterials. And these materials are like the cutting edge of material science. Believe me, like there's not, if they're interested in anything at Area 51 in terms of like the future of invisibility and anti-gravity technology, it's research on these nanomaterials and metamaterials. Metamaterials are way better candidate for anti-gravity than element 115. And they're more consistent with, you know, the stories of the crash debris from Roswell. You know, like why did they need Air Force intelligence operatives for a bunch of balsa wood and mylar if it was really a freaking weather balloon?
Oh, dude, it was totally a weather balloon.
Right.
I absolutely
So why did this rancher and the fire department, they tried to burn it? Why were they so interested in this material and started all these rumors if it was just mylar and tinfoil and balsa wood from a weather balloon? It doesn't like the materials that he described was this bakelite material that was like clear, and he said you rotate it a certain way and it would become completely invisible, like see-through, and then, you know, like you rotate it the other ways and it's like you can't see through it. And the only thing that would, that's an optical crystal. It's an optical crystal, a photonic crystal material, some type of photonic crystals.
I've listened to Jesse Marcel talk about the when he retrieved the stuff, and never has he said that he saw an alien or he saw just some debris like tinfoil stuff. He never said anything like that. No. He didn't know what it was, you know. But that's like what he says specifically, like he didn't know what it was.
Right. And then his son, he said his dad brought some of the materials home and showed him, like when he was there, and he describes the materials later, like it was like this bakelite. It almost looked like bakelite material. It was like crystalline and glittery, you know, and shine. That looks like, that sounds to me like photonic crystals and stuff.
Let me postulate this. If it's possible that the government retrieved a spacecraft from Roswell, could it not be possible that Bob Lazar helped reverse engineer a spacecraft that was, in fact, recovered from our government?
Yeah. Well, this is the idea, is that
just saying,
you have to believe they might have recovered some craft. They might have had these things around, but they might have also like hired Bob to sell this element 115 story to people, because it was disinformation and leading people in this whole like other wrong direction and thinking about the whole thing. I don't know.
Put it past the government to do that. You know, like that's you know,
that makes a lot of. The thing is, element 115, you know, it was discovered years later, yes, but it wasn't stable. It's not stable, and it doesn't have any of these properties really Bob described. Yeah, it makes sense that, you know, you create you want to store the most amount of energy in a small amount of area. Yeah, you could either do it by mass energy, by, you know, building these massive atoms that you could keep and store, because it's the best way to compact mass in a very small area in that sense. He also mentioned some stuff about antimatter, and of course antimatter would be a much better way to store energy, massive amounts of energy, if you stored it in the form of antimatter. But I mean, he really didn't say enough about antimatter and this stuff to make it me really convinced that he really knew anything detailed. And then, you know, he made a couple like lucky guesses, because he said, well, I think that the strong force was related to gravity. And then you know, years later, that when these physicists came up with the model for the graviton, they said it came from two gluons interacting, and that was somehow, it's like, oh well, Bob Lazar made that prediction. Some guy brought this up recently, and I was like, it's not like, well, you know, like you say a bunch of stuff, and you're like, maybe one thing matches and stuff. It doesn't mean like you were right and that you really had access or knowledge to any kind of crazy information. He could have easily just,
gravity was a wave, and back then, I mean, they did teach you that gravity was, you know, like gravitons and stuff, and it was something like subatomic particles. But he's like, no, it is a wave, but it's also a theory that Albert Einstein had came up with. So it's not like he made it up. But he's still saying that it's a fact that it
It's
It's
either
like
a particle or a wave, and
you know,
but and then
but
this
they're
whole idea of
invisible.
this thing,
We know
like
for a fact, you know. So I mean, like that is pretty amazing that he was like straight up, and then they could use it to, you know, if you could build your own, if you could make a gravitational field around your craft, you, and for all intents and purposes, could just travel across the whole wanted to, you know.
right.
I mean, that
But
would
there's
make it.
nothing about like how to actually do it. He kind of like makes these wild claims about, you know, the element 115 transmutates and then it decays and it creates antimatter in the process, and then that antimatter shoots down this thing and then it goes here,
That
but he doesn't
it had an
describe where it goes
amplifier
from
that would
there,
amplify the wave, you know.
or what it does, or what kind of wave, or where it is, or what it does, you know. And it doesn't, he doesn't describe anything like beyond that. So, you know, maybe that's a issue of compartmentalization, that they were only trying to introduce him to that one part and that they didn't give him the whole bigger picture. But really, like what we know about these sort of metamaterials, are the way to warp space-time, they actually warp space-time and build an Alcubierre warp drive that actually warps space-time, is you need to change the fundamental constants of space, the permeability and permittivity of free space. And you also need to find a way to basically link space over these vast distances and create like create a wormhole, basically a way that you can tunnel through space-time to get to one point to the other, where you don't actually have to travel through the space-time itself. It's like a balloon. You're basically projecting the front of the balloon into a distant point in space through a needle-like hole, and then opening up a balloon in space at another point, and then zipping through the space in between to get across it. That's kind of like the whole idea of warp or interstellar drive, which would be entirely necessary. So, but anyways, it's like Bob Lazar didn't talk about any of that kind of more advanced stuff, and that was before his time.
Like if he's just reverse engineering something and they're just having him go over stuff, you know, he might not have all that information. You know, he might only have so much information, and what he has, he, you know, wanted to put out there. It just seems to me that if you're making it up like this, like the way he is, like his personality and how he acts is, it's he sold me. I'm like, it's fucking good. I mean, I've never, like, there's so many people come out.
Yeah, it can get like you have to be a really good actor, man. He's got to be a really good actor if he's lying. Like I agree.
If he's lying, he's like fucking fantastic. Because I mean, he does such a good job at pretending to be a physicist, and it's not like you could just go and pretend to. You got to know what you're fucking talking about.
A little bit. You got to make it sound like you know what you're talking about. You know, like the gravity waves and this and that. I'd love to like get an interview with him, where I ask him, just like throw like a random integral at him and ask him to do this random integral or a random math problem in physics, just to see if he can actually do the problem and get the right answer. Like, because that would be a real good indication that he actually, you know, has a real background in it. And then of course, you know, I'd love to get in on one of those Q&A sessions with him, but he doesn't want to do interviews. He doesn't want to do he's really shying away from these kind of like questions and answer things.
But he has been since like 1991 or 92. Like, he dropped off the map, dude. He came out.
Yeah, because of that one interview with him, when they asked him a bunch of questions about his educational background, and he like knew he lied and like got caught, and they asked him a bunch of other questions, and like he basically like, I got that whole interview. It's the one where he's got it's got camouflage like netting in the back, and he's wearing like all white. You know?
Yeah.
It's that one where back in the Q&A session, if you sit and watch through all the questions and answers, it's like, yeah, if I were that dude, I wouldn't like go out in public and try to like talk anymore either. But I don't know. It's like maybe you're right. Maybe he's telling the truth, and that's like he's just so sick of the nonsense. But what's his version of the truth? Like you said, we don't know. It's so crazy. Like anything that
because I think it's weird, and he's. But
the thing is, like, it just makes more sense to me, right? He's employed,
or that, you know, I think that he did it, and maybe that the stuff that he was actually doing on there, it could have been alien, it could have been, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was whatever, and they simply told him this because they're fucking weird for some reason. But
Well, S4 just doesn't seem like the right place. There's nothing out there. That guy Jerry Freeman, he was an archaeologist looking for like the 49ers, the trail of the 49ers,
yeah.
the lost 49ers. Apparently like took this path before they died, and they were never found. And he was looking for him out in Death Valley, and then up. He was actually went up to Papoose Lake and walked out on Papoose Lake and camped out there for like 2 days. And he later died because of all the radiation that he was exposed to out there, because it's right next to the Nevada test range, and it's like one of the most radioactive places on the planet, which again is another reason that it's the worst place imaginable for a top secret base because of the radioactivity. But the whole idea that there's like a secret base in the side of the mountains that was somehow constructed, and then all the tire tracks from the contracting vehicles and everything like covered up, and it was all swept under the rug, or maybe they drilled a hole 15 miles through the mountains from Area 51 out to Papoose Lake.
Well, that's the thing. If you look on Google Earth, you can clearly see there are plenty of roads going to Papoose Lake bed for no reason. I don't know why they're going there, but they wrap around the mountains and everything. They're there. It's all that, and it's funny because literally, like he says, you would go south from Area 51, and that's exactly where you would have to go. As you can see, there's a road going from Area 51 to the side of Papoose Lake bed. And
I want to see that road, because I didn't think there was any roads going there.
Absolutely. Go on Google Earth right now. Look it up, dude. It's absolutely there. And there are roads right to Papoose Lake bed. And not only that, but if you go back in time while you're looking at Papoose Lake beds and all around those areas, you can see different places where trucks will go up to like a dump site, like they're driving into it, and their doors will shut, and it is like a mountain. It looks just like a mountain, but I think they're like taking stuff out of it, like debris and shit. But it covers itself up, and it just looks like the mountain in the daytime. But sometimes it's open and there's trucks going into it.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the area. There's a road that goes to the in the northwest corner of Papoose Lake. There's a road there, and then there's a couple other roads, but they're just not like super traveled and access. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced or sold on the location that he said it was, or that they've said it was, because it just doesn't look like anything's there. If he was out in the desert crawling around those areas near that close to a super secret installation, they would have killed him or caught him or apprehended him or something. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'd love to know more, but it just seems to me like
but which one of us is going to try to break in there and prove that guy wrong? Okay, yeah. He said he fucking walked in there, dude. Let's do it. Come on, Jeremy. Fucking walk in there, dude.
He also got cancer from all the radiation, dude. Like, let's no one's gonna prove that wrong. It's like no way to prove it right or prove it wrong. It's like beating a dead horse. I agree. I know.
I just think that would be the perfect.
It's not 15 miles. It's like a mile.
It's going to keep people away. All right. Because of just all the radiation, but it's probably not that bad considering Area 51 is just a couple miles away. All right, just a couple miles away is Area 51, so the radiation's not that bad that you're gonna die from just walking through there. So I don't think that had anything to do with his cancer. It could have, but I could be wrong. But I think, walking in there a day, people still go to the test site. People still work there. So I mean, they're not dying. They have their jobs to bury the nuclear waste and make sure they keep it contained and everything. And it's interesting. I just read October 9th, Congress passed a bill making the Department of Energy to start transferring their technology over to the commercial sector. I thought it was really interesting because I'm like, I've heard people talk about how the government would have like advanced tech and then they would like dish it out to the people. But I was always like the day after Roswell and stuff, but I don't believe it. Like, that's stupid. Why would they wouldn't? That doesn't make any sense. But it is in fact true. And Congress just wrote a bill and they're like, hey, you guys need to put all this new stuff that you guys have, go ahead and start putting it out to the public and blah, blah, blah. And it was right there in this bill from Congress, man. So they definitely.
Where's that? I'd love to check the link out on that too. I definitely, I want to see if it mentions what technologies or anything specifically about,
No,
I'm always interested
really cool,
in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually, it does mention some stuff, but it's stuff I've never fucking heard of, so I have no idea what it means. But you would probably fucking love it, Jeremy, because they're like talking about a bunch of shit. I'm like, what the fuck is this, dude? I've never heard of that shit before. I don't even, it's some kind of weird sciences and shit. Yeah, I've never even heard of it, dude. But definitely check it out, man. I fucking have it somewhere. Where do I have it? On my phone. Oh yeah, I gotta download it on my phone. I'll send it to you, dude. It's freaking awesome. But it just tell you that you know, some things that people say that the government would do, they actually do that. They would have technology, and is it possible, like when Bob Lazar says that there are people in the government who get to work with a whole different set of physics, you know, that standard academia doesn't even know about. I mean, it doesn't seem right, but I mean, I guess so. You know, I wouldn't put it past the government. You know, when you're a scientist, when you have unlimited funding, you can.
I feel like our government. I feel like our government is so far behind on science in so many ways that it's like I really feel like the scientific and academic community is more like miles ahead of where a lot of them are at in some ways, but. Yeah, there are these special access programs with some of these scientists who work for the government that are involved on some pretty, you know, and they do have a lot of scientists that they employ to hire to write research papers on just exploratory new ideas and just theoretical stuff just to see, you know, what people can come up with or what could be out there and stuff. And it's hard to say, you know. I feel like a lot of it would be if there's any kind of programs like this, it's going to be within these private corporations that are sort of run by the same people. It's easier to keep information secret if it's in the private sector than in government, because it's not the cross accountability or documentation or the things of that nature. It's easier.
MJ12.
What, the MJ12 documents?
Yeah.
I don't believe them. No.
No, me neither. I don't, and I got a lot of respect for Stanton Friedman, but I think he goofed on that one. Of course, I mean, a lot of guys do. And, that's the thing. It's like I always want to find out what the truth is. I don't want to just believe someone because their story sounds good. Like Bob Lazar, his story sounds good, but it's like I don't want to just believe him because of that. I want to find what's the truth.
The only reason I don't believe him is because the element 115 stuff doesn't make a lot of sense, and just all the information I've seen on like this metamaterials stuff, which I'm like screaming at people, like, check out metamaterials if you're interested in anti-gravity, and like check out warp drive. Like, I've been trying to get people to look into this, but it seems like they're just like so easily distracted by some of this other stuff. It just seems like, I don't know. Then again, it's like the average person doesn't have the technical or scientific background to really like know what they're looking at. So it's a lot of people are in this just purely for entertainment and their beliefs. Like just the whole idea of this fascination of like, oh my God, they got craft down there and they're working on it. There's a whole secret fleet of this stuff, and they're working on this in secret labs and stuff, and it's just the whole idea of that which really promotes people and fascinates them and gets them intrigued and into this. I remember watching like Independence Day when that movie first came out, and like that scene where they bring Will Smith into the underground bunker and like, yeah, we recovered this thing at Roswell. Like, yeah, we didn't. It just started waking up recently, like now that the mothership's like back around, like it's starting to, like it can fly now and stuff. And I don't know, it was just like,
I want to tell you something real quick, Jeremy. Speaking of Independence Day, and this is for everyone watching. I'm sorry, everyone at home, I can't see your guys' comments or anything, so I'm sorry, but I do want to bring up something. And this is what's important about the UFO world, and it has to do with Independence Day. Jeremy, do you remember there's this scene where Randy Quaid at the end, he's getting ready to fly the plane, you remember? And they're looking for pilots to go fight the mothership. And Randy Quaid is like, I'm a pilot, I can fly. And he's like, and I just want to say that 20 years ago, I was abducted by aliens, and I'd love my chance to get up there and pay them back. And then the journalists are sitting around, they're like, and they're sitting there laughing at him. They're laughing at him. Even though there's a giant alien mothership fucking getting ready to attack him. They're laughing at that dude for saying he got abducted. That is what the fucking disinformation does to people. That even when it's right in your fucking face, you're still getting laughed at for it. And people are oblivious to it. They're making fun of him, even though they're going to fight the aliens. But they're laughing at this guy, man. And, you know, and another part of that, where the fucking president was like, he's like, you got that crash up the spaceship in Roswell. He's like, there's no Roswell, there's no crash spaceship, you know? And it's like, dude, a fucking spaceship just blew up your fucking White House, dude. And you're gonna sit there and fucking, you know, you're gonna fucking mock him like that.
Yeah.
That's what the government does to people who see UFOs. And that's why it's so fucking hard for people who, like myself, who've had
not just UFOs, the abduction phenomenon as well. You know, it's all like, yeah, you know? I don't know, man. You never know what's out there. It's a strange world, but like my whole thing with Bob Lazar is just purely the science. It's really mainly the science, because so much of that other stuff, like we just went into, it's like you could stretch your imagination to almost believe anything, almost like a lot of different possibilities, or what's possible within the story. Just even the story that he told, you know, it's possible that he's a hoaxer, that he's lying. It's possible that it's all the true, and he made like that everything he said is true and it's all real. And it's possible that it's something in between that, you know, like they showed him something, they really brought him out there, but they did it for disinformation purposes and all these other reasons and stuff. Because, you know, there's a lot of people that have brought up the fact that, you know, his security background check and clearance background check didn't take, like, normally it takes like 8 months before you can get a security clearance before you're even allowed on an SAP or allowed into a program like that. And Bob Lazar seemed to have passed his within a couple weeks, you know, and was out there working within a couple of weeks.
Well, he already had clearance from like Los Alamos and already had bitten, you know, what he claimed.
Supposedly, maybe if that's the case, if he already had clearance, but from when you get the job there, you need to go through a whole nother background check to get involved in that level of an SAP and that high. It would have been a higher security clearance for sure than whatever he was working on at Los Alamos.
Remember this: there are McDonald's employees at Area 51. Okay, so it's not like, oh, this is fucking this is a no-go, and only, you know, fucking people who drive semi-trucks, trains, fucking there's a McDonald's in Area 51. All right, I mean, like, there are just regular people who there, so it's like it's not going to be so super secure for this guy who just flips a fucking burger, you know? They're just like, yeah, probably whatever, you know. So I mean, I could see, you know, and not taking too long on some, you know, on certain things, you know, especially a program that's so, you know, just hush hush like that, where no one was even talking about it. It's probably not too big of a deal because no one's gonna fucking believe him anyway. Or maybe that's what they were like, hey, well, to keep people from, in case, and they ever do go to, you know, loose lips sink ships, so they don't want people talking, you know. So maybe just tell these scientists that this is alien technology. This is why you can't tell people. But they're only doing that just, they're like, hey, you can't tell them because of that. You'll make the whole world go crazy, you know. I could see the government doing that. They're fucking twisted, man.
Well, I could see a lot of that, but I don't see any evidence that element 115's the secret to anti-gravity, or that there's anything there with the science that Bob Lazar disclosed. And as far as the science goes, what have we really learned from his disclosures? Yeah, maybe.
Oh, I think we lost.
Yeah. Sorry, I got unplugged by my. You like unplugging wires, huh? Is that funny? What's your favorite thing? Airplanes. He likes airplane to watch airplane show. He's got an airplane show he watches on my computer, but we're gonna watch that in a little bit. All in all, it's like the metamaterials and the quasi and metamaterials research, I think, is way more interesting than element 115. Way better candidate for anti-gravity, warp drive, interstellar. That's alien technology, basically alien technology. Look it up. It's pretty cool stuff. What's the matter? You want to watch airplanes?
I'll let you go, man. Jeremy, I want to thank you for coming and having this debate with me. I think we got a lot of stuff out, and everyone at home, will let them decide on If they
Hey,
believe
hey,
Bob,
believe what you want. Believe what you
you
want.
know,
I'm not gonna here change anybody's opinion or mind on
you,
stuff. But I just telling you people, I don't believe him. I think he's full of shit.
I believe the guy. I think he's telling the truth. I'm not sure if he knows what he's talking about, but I believe him. But at the same time, man, you got to take everything with a grain of salt, dude. I mean, everybody, even in the UFO world, you got to take everyone with a grain of salt because people are fucking insane, man, and they embellish on shit, and it makes this whole community look crazy, and it could be really a pain in the ass for anybody who's actually had an experience, But I thought it was an important thing that if that we bring this out and
I'm gonna put something on. I'm gonna put a lot more stuff together here. We brought up a lot of topics, and I realize there's a lot more stuff. I wanna research and put together my own like little summary on Bob Lazar of when, because that documentary is gonna come out in December and stuff. And I've been going off on it on Twitter. Like you seen me, man. Like just arguing. I argue with everybody about it. I'm just like, no, dude. It's fun. I like it. I just want people like look up real shit. Don't waste your time on element 115. Even though it's like, yeah, I guess it's all right because if you weaponize your curiosity, I guess it's not a bad thing. If you're curious, it's good. It's just don't believe shit unless you like have proof. Like and use your curiosity to your advantage to learn more. Like I did. I went and went to college and started actually going to physics classes just to learn this stuff so I could be better at understanding it and be better at talking about it and knowing what I'm talking about, quantitatively and qualitatively, which is important.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thanks for this, and we'll definitely do another one in a couple months because once this documentary comes out, hopefully we'll have more stuff to talk about and more topics to mull over with this case. Because in the meantime, I'm gonna put together a little bit more sources and stuff on some of the other points I brought up and get some more information out on this because I want to get a whole timeline together too on where I want to put his whole timeline together date by date so we can get like a good grasp on that too. Because there's a lot of stuff in Bob Lazar's history, man. He was like he got arrested on pandering charges because he was running a prostitution ring on a website.
Okay, now listen here. Now this is fucking weird. All right. Okay. So.
And then so you get
when he went to court, the judge sentenced him to 3 years, and he got a suspended sentence. He got 3 years, and he had to go see a psychiatrist. Okay, they were trying to make him look crazy. Why the fuck? When's the last time they sentenced a pimp to go to psychiatry to see his therapist? They don't. What the fuck are you talking about? They're just trying to make the dude look fucking crazy. They're like, oh, you got sentenced to psychiatry. You got to go see his therapist every fucking week for 3 years. He's like,
but he listed his job on the court documents. He listed his occupation as a self-employed photo processor, which would have been given him the skills to fake all those ID badges and come up with that story too.
That's a good point.
He didn't list his employer, employment as these places on court documents. He didn't say, "Oh, I worked at Area 51," or
well, you don't fucking list your old job where you list where you work now, and that might have been where he worked now, I mean, everyone knew he had already left that place, so. But
yeah, it just seems kind of it's a whole strange case, man, indeed. So I don't know. It may I would like to see some evidence that he worked worked there something more than the ID badge and something. But again, it's just so hard, man. It's like you're not gonna find anyone with the smoking gun because anyone who comes out of that place and starts talking, they're gonna do something very similar to, which is
probably
who knows what they would do if they would even make it that far, So it's hard to say, man, and I'm glad we got this discussion going, and people out there look up Metamaterials if you're interested.
And make sure you go and check out AlienScientist channel and give him a like and subscribe to his shit. And make sure you subscribe to mine. And what's up, everybody? Go get the UFO Proof app and all that stuff and buy your kick-ass gear and give me some fucking money, all right? All right, I love you guys. Thank you so much, Journey. I really appreciate it, brother. I'm fucking out of here, all right?
All right, dude. Thanks.
UFO Proof out.